This idea of hierarchies of value sits quietly at the heart of the thought leader's game. It's one of the tensions that we don't always name, but we all feel it in one way or another. Are we all equal in worth? Is a question. And the answer, of course, is yes. Do we all contribute in the same way or create the same impact? And I guess the answer is not always, and that's okay. Some contributions are quiet, they're steady, and they're foundational, and others are catalytic, leveraged, and highly visible. And we honour them differently, not because one is better, because each brings its own kind of value. And I guess this is one of society's biggest dualities, like a collective tug of war between fairness and reward. And I think it impacts on pricing and positioning for a thought leader. Libertarians would argue for freedom, and capitalists might reward output, while socialists would honour the dignity of the individual. And each view holds truth. And I believe that each becomes flawed when it excludes the other. The German philosopher Hegel called this a dialectic, a clash of thesis and antithesis that, when held consciously, can produce a higher order synthesis. And this is something that sat behind a lot of Dr. Ken Wilber's work around integral theory. And I guess that's the invitation here, not to pick sides, but to hold the tension long enough for something more intelligent and more whole to emerge. So here's a question. Are you okay making more money than someone else? It's a funny little question because we act as if that's true, but there's some philosophical stuff that sits beneath this. And what makes that okay in your world? Is it that you worked more hours, like hello, Industrial Revolution, or that your work is better, deeper, and more masterful? Think, Renaissance master artists. If it's simply an inputs-outputs equation, don't play the thought leader's game, because that's a factory mindset. It's unit-based, it's equalized, and it's mechanical. But if it's not about hours, then it must be about value, which means we're talking about a hierarchy of value. And here's the rub. An inability to accept value asymmetry leads to fear around pricing, guilt around success, and an unconscious need to stay small. And this plays out in all kinds of ways. We might sell time instead of outcomes. We might undercharge. We might resist the black belt system that's so core to our curriculum at Thought Leaders. And it's why so many people never get to $1 million practice. Not because they're not good enough, but because in some level they're still trying to be fair. And I reckon we need to sort of explore that. Like, fair to who? Fair to clients by undercharging? Fair to your peers by not out-earning them? Fair to your past self who used to work harder for less money? And this kind of fairness isn't always virtue. Sometimes it's hesitation in disguise, and I'm careful with that because there are also systems that don't allow for fairness, and I acknowledge that. So it's an internalized belief that your rise might mean someone else's fall, as if value were a zero-sum game, and it just isn't. But insight, transformation, and impact, they aren't limited resources. We can't, mine them off the planet. So you don't need to shrink your worth to make things fair. You need to expand your understanding of what fairness actually means. Fair doesn't mean equal. Fair means just, earned, and aligned. Now, I just want to be clear again. That doesn't mean we ignore equity, accessibility, or generosity, right? You can be generous and commercial. You can price in a way that honors both the work you do and the world you want to help shape. But let it be intentional, conscious, not habitual. Because conscious fairness expands value. A compulsive fairness often shrinks it. There's a story about the plumber in the Vatican. So the Vatican's, flooding. Plumber after plumber's called in. None can fix it. Days go by. Priceless art is at risk. Eventually, the gathered plumbers speak in hushed tones. There's one man, Luigi, but he's expensive, Monsignor. The cardinal doesn't hesitate. Get him! Luigi arrives in the middle of the night, sleepy, calm, and disheveled. He walks up to a pipe, takes a nearby hammer, and with a single bang, stops the flood. The cardinal stares in disbelief. One hit? That's it? For $1,000? Luigi smiles. The hit was free. knowing where to hit, that's what you paid for. Now, yes, this is a fable, and in real life, most clients would need to see your mastery before they'll pay for it, which is why positioning, reputation, and results matter. But it's not just the insight they're paying for, it's also the experience of working with someone who shows up clearly, communicates cleanly, and delivers confidently. Because we're in the experience business, right? I said this last week. You may have the knowledge, but if the delivery doesn't land, the value doesn't either. People don't just buy transformation, they buy how it's offered. They remember how it felt to be in the room with you. The story they tell later isn't just what you said, it's how you made it real for them. So yes, earn the right, build the trust, deliver the experience, and once you've done that, don't undercharge for the tap. I wanted to, because this is such an important idea, take up a little bit more time, if you'd indulge me, and sort of explore what I mean by value asymmetry. It means that not all contributions create equal sort of impact, and they don't need to. Some work is replaceable, some is rare, and some is transformative. This is not about ego, but it is about effect. A single idea can shift someone's future. A 30-minute conversation can save 30 years of wandering. That's not unfair. That's asymmetric. And here's the key. Acknowledging value asymmetry doesn't mean we're endorsing inequality. It means being honest about what shift outcomes and owning the part that you play in that shift. Perceived value is also shaped by bias, race, gender, accent, background. The world doesn't always reward the right people or in the right way. And that's why claiming your value is an act of leadership. We don't play fair by playing small. We play fair by redefining what value looks like on our own terms. You can honour dignity, pursue equity, and still price on impact. So something to sit with. And I don't often say this stuff because the minute you get into politics and beliefs and ideologies, all sorts of things can blow up. But Karl Marx argued that labour creates value, and that when value is extracted disproportionately, you might call that exploitation. Capitalists would argue that value also comes from risk and ownership and innovation, and that those who invest more should receive more. In the thought leaders model, and this is key, you are both the labour and the owner. You do the work and you own the IP. You carry the risk. You harvest the reward. Now, some are going to say that this sounds like capitalism dressed up in creativity, and maybe. But in our model, the means of production aren't owned by someone else. They're owned by you. Your ideas, your voice, your platform. So here's the deeper question. Are you still thinking like labour, or have you started pricing like ownership? Because if Hegel was right, evolution doesn't come from eliminating this conflict, but from synthesizing the opposing truths. Time and value, effort, impact, equality and reward, all can be honoured, but not all are paid the same. And I don't think that's a moral failure. I think that's value asymmetry, and it's yours to claim.